look, before we get started, before we kick in, why don't you give us like a quick 1 minute pitch? What is Specter? What do you do? That kind of stuff.
Sure thing. So for those of you who don't know Specter yet, what we do is we provide insights about private companies and startups. We are the go-to solution for deal sourcing. Currently, we service about 350 venture capital firms and private equity firms, and they use Specter to they use Specter to discover insights about companies, interesting talents, and investors. And every basically data object in the private market, we offer something very edgy and something very special with regards to insights about what's really happening right now. So the actionability of the insights is really our USP.
Nice. And so the purpose of the platform is to help VCs, PEs find and research cool young startups, right?
Exactly. It's not just about the early stage. I would say at least half of our clients are more on the growth and late stage because there obviously you can discover more interesting metrics and insights about those companies.
Nice. And you spent time as a VC, right?
Yes, I was first at Hummingbird Ventures, and then I also helped Cameron and Tommy kick off Giant Ventures. And together with Marco, my co-founder, we also do a bit of angel investing on the side.
Nice. So you were able to sort of build the platform that you wanted to see as a VC.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that was kind of an inception story. I saw, the likes of Crunchbase and PitchBook, and I just thought, hey, I think somebody can build something a bit nicer and a bit edgier when it comes to the insight.
Yeah, nice. And I want to get into that a bit because you are building a tool and a solution that services like VC, but
Yeah,
you decided to bootstrap.
yeah,
So
indeed. I mean, yeah, it's a bit of a paradox, right? If you look at every competitor we have, they're either VC backed or owned by a large incumbent, the likes of Morningstar or S&P and so on, right? So we have been both extremely lucky and also disciplined, which allowed us to bootstrap. And since then, basically since the early days, we have been reinvesting every dollar back into the business. It obviously has its pros and cons, right? So they're kind of obvious, but on the cons, we are strapped for resources, right? So limited resources compared to the really big players, and that's especially visible if you look at the likes of like distribution and GTM and so on, right? So you have to either outthink them or you need to outwork them. But it also has some pros, and the pros are mostly connected to the freedom to say no to things and really focus on what matters for the user and really building something that's valuable and adding value to our customers.
and so was that a conscious decision that you made when you founded the company? You said we're gonna, despite being working in VC, building in VC, we want to build a bootstrap business.
I think it was circumstantial. Like I would love to tell you that day one, I knew that we are going to be able to bootstrap it. I think it was more of a circumstance. Like we were lucky to kind of be able to get some really nice early clients, which allowed us to be able to bootstrap and to be able to be profitable from day one.
So you've never needed the cash. And have you ever considered in the last kind of like 6 years that you've been building, have you ever thought, oh, well, because we're restrained on resource, because we haven't got the money, maybe we should try and raise a small round, especially it could be powerful to get your own clients investing. Has that ever crossed your mind?
Of course, it has. We are happy. We are happily bootstrapped. That's what I'm gonna say.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, very cool. Like I want to talk about the product that you've built, the platform that you've built.
Yeah.
Your platform is geared to helping companies find other companies, help investors find companies. So if we just look at, say, like early stage for the moment, what are the metrics that your clients or customers are looking at your platform for or assessing startups by?
Yeah. So to kind of cover it high level. So on Spectre, you can find data about companies, you can find data about talents behind those companies, and you can also find data about investors, right? And in each of those data feeds, you can find something very special. Since day one, our USP to our clients and users has been that we provide the most data points on the market, and that's a verifiable fact. So if you look at, for example, our company data feed, we have over 200 different growth metrics. You can find everything from funding to team breakdowns, product reviews, app intelligence, web intelligence, social interaction, patents, trademarks, like you name it, we have it in the platform. And same goes on the people side, where we have over like 35 distinct highlights, including everything that has to do with experience, skill set, education, and so on. And then on the investor side, obviously we capture every single transaction, but we also focus on very interesting part, which is attention signals. So we track over 50,000 people who work in private equity and VC firms and also angel investors and so on. And we track their interactions with founders across major social media platforms. And we use all of those interactions to tell you which founders and which companies are getting extremely hot and are getting the eyeballs from the most interesting VCs and private equity firms. It's a very unique product. It's inspired actually by the show Billions, if you ever watched that. And if you are in VC and PE, I think you should definitely see it.
Oh, really cool. So you, for example, you would track that certain like venture partner has added a founder on LinkedIn. Is that something that you might track, or is it like,
Yes, I mean, I cannot speak about the details of it, but yes, that's conceptually how it works. And we have been doing
got
this
it?
for about 4 years. And over the 4 years, we have predicted like tens of thousands of funding rounds, acquisitions, and partnerships. Because a lot of the VC work, especially, happens on social media. There's no way you can kind of not interact with people on
Yeah,
social
yeah.
media if you're serious about VC.
No, that's really cool. And I know you mentioned that you do angel investing on the side.
Yeah.
Do you use it? Do you see like really hot founders that are getting hit by all the tier one VCs? And do you think, oh, maybe I should kind of like slide this person a DM? Maybe I should like get involved myself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have been using the Specter product for our deal sourcing. Truth be told, look, VC is a really intense job, and we quickly noticed that unless we are gonna give it like our full passion and our full time, like we cannot really like be pretending to be like an active angel
Yeah,
investor.
yeah.
So it's something that we do occasionally. It's not my day-to-day job, but we have been really using only Spectre to source the deals.
Yeah, really cool. Okay. Um, you mentioned that you track what the most data points out of any platform out there. Are there any data points that you don't track that you want to track, or that you think you might be able to track in the future but not currently?
Yeah, absolutely. So we want to have a bigger market share in private equity. I don't think I'm giving away here anything confidential. It's important for us. It's a big market, and obviously, it's our next natural evolution to capture more of a market share in private equity. So we are consciously working on a few data points which are interesting. There again, without giving anything confidential, like what's interesting for private equity investors is anything that has to do with kind of financials, cap tables, and so forth, right? So we have been working on a lot of developments on that side. And then with other kind of data points, we really actively think about using AI, not just as like a window dressing thing or not as an afterthought. We are really like embedding AI into our product and making it basically derive and identify interesting insights about companies and individuals that would be difficult to just get from like static data points.
Interesting. And AI is changing the venture game in lots of different ways. Is it going to change the metrics that you kind of put out on your platform? Like I know, for example, that everybody's always talking about lean teams, revenue per employee, that's sort of like a new great metric to track is how lean a team is, how much revenue they're generating with a small team. Are there metrics like that are changing that you think are going to be more important over time?
I mean, that's a loaded question. Like, let me first tell you kind of how we think about AI. So whenever we think about integrating AI, we really think about it from two angles. First one is this going to significantly improve the product for the user, right? So is the user going to have a much better experience? And second point is connected to the insight, right? So do I need to be using AI to pull this insight? And I can give you some examples where it makes a lot of sense and also some examples where it doesn't make sense. Now, specifically about like AI companies, you are right. Those companies are growing in a very different fashion and follow a very different trajectory than the companies in the past. But if you look at kind of the main metrics in VC, let's call it headcount, web visits, any sort of like social engagement, and like any sort of like product growth, those are very similar in terms of the data points themselves to what we would have been already tracking before. So there are some metrics specifically about AI companies that we will be adding, but I don't really want to disclose much just yet.
Yeah, yeah, nice. And has the metrics that you've changed, the metrics that you've tracked change over time? You know, you've been doing this for 6 years. Are there things that you're tracking now that you didn't used to, and that you're seeing clients ask more of?
Yeah, I mean, so we've been adding a lot of data points, but you quickly find out that it's not just about innovating and adding data points, it's also about scalability. So especially in the last, let's call it like 12, 18 months, we've been spending a lot of time on increasing our scale. So that has to do with a number of companies we track, with a number of talents, investors, and transactions, and so on, right? So if you look at Specter today, we track over 50 million companies, 500 million people, 300,000 investors, and we have tracked over, I think, 800,000 transactions, right? So
Wow.
that's really important for every VC and PE investor, like the scale of it. And coming back to the metrics, again, we provide already more metrics than most of our competitors, or all of our competitors. It has been the USP. In terms of what we are adding, we are really spending a lot of time adding some of the interesting AI insights that we can basically capture from websites and all sorts of other online sources. I can give you, like, let's say, two examples of some stuff that's really interesting. So on company level, we have been using AI to detect reported customers, right? So we go through every single testimonial, we go through every single client mention, we go through every single client quote, and we can tell you exactly, for instance, who has OpenAI as a customer, right? And that's an interesting insight, especially around early stage startups, right? If they are able to sign Fortune 500 companies, it's a banger. And similarly, we've been working with using AI to gather companies' accurate revenues in real time. And that's something that we are going to announce very soon. And I think it's one of the coolest things I've worked on in the past few years.
Oh, that's really cool. So, yeah, you're trying to get traction in. Yeah, you're trying to measure and report on traction, but sometimes that can be really difficult to get numbers on and data on. That's really cool. And how are you? I guess, like, how are you able to do that? Where are you finding the information? Where's AI getting it from?
So if you open your, specifically talking now about the accurate revenues, right? So
Yeah.
if you open your LinkedIn or Twitter feed today, I guarantee that you scroll about 2 times and you're going to have a founder who is announcing that they crossed 5 million ARR, or that they hit 10 million ARR, and so on, right?
Yeah.
So we started working on the revenue extraction about 8 months ago. And since then, basically, it has kind of exploded with regard to how many founders are now suddenly building in public, right? So I think our timing was then, again, coincidentally very good. But coming back to your question, what are the sources, right? So we did a lot of research into this and we found out a bunch of things. So for instance, local media sources are about like 2.7 times more likely to inform about revenue updates than like any sort of like top level media outlets. Then second thing is companies are much more likely to disclose their revenues in their funding update than a few years ago. And then we obviously also capture all the different social media feeds. We capture all the different podcasts and other sources.
Really cool. Yeah, it's going to be a super valuable resource. Like, you're going to be able to have the biggest database of, yeah, like private revenue data out there. I also wanted to talk on selling to VCs. Like,
Yeah.
most of the people I talk to are founders who are pitching to VCs to raise money. You're coming at it from a very different angle. You're trying to sell them a product or service, or sell them software. How's that process? What are they like as customers?
I mean, VCs are incredible customers. Why is that? Because they're perpetually learning. So if you speak to, or if you sell to a VC, they probably hop on a fusion reactor pitch in the morning, then they hop into AI drug discovery call, and that's before breakfast. And then they might have like a demo with Specter, right? And so what does it mean is that it's very difficult to impress them, because what is interesting, the bar is extremely, extremely
Yeah.
high. So you really need to have something super good and something like very special for them to buy it. So that's what I've learned so far about selling to VCs.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I guess, yeah, they get pitched all day, every day.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, especially nowadays, with all the AI developments, like you really need to have something special. The bar is very high. And then I think interesting thing about geography, right? So considering we are on a European show, if you compare kind of the US and European VCs, they have the same goal. So their goal is obviously to improve our deal sourcing and to have like the best possible tech stack, right? So that's the same. But we see that US firms are about 50% faster when it comes to decision making. European investors still tend to go for like a more formal review, diligence, even like the legal review obviously takes a lot longer than in the US. So I think they have the same goal. It's just the Europeans take a little bit longer to get there.
That's so interesting. So even when they're buying software, it's not, yeah, it'd be, I imagine that is also reflected in the deals that they sign. But it's interesting
Yeah.
that that's like a real cultural thing that you've noticed, that they move slower. Cool. That's really interesting. What's next for Specter, do you think?
Um, I mean, we are going to continue building, right? So we really enjoy what we are doing. We are deeply passionate about building edge into the product. I think like if you really, really honestly think about it, like there is not that many like data vendors who think all that much about adding edge into the platform. Like not to speak about anyone badly, but I think a lot of our competitors are just Wikipedias, and we never aspired to be like a Wikipedia of companies, right? We always wanted to have something actionable within the product, and that's keeping us honest, you know. So the fact that we are bootstrapped and the fact that we are doing this with a lean team is really keeping us on our toes.
Yeah.
And we have been really pushing super hard to bring the product to the next level. And we have been shipping.
And do you think the market has changed since you started? I feel like I'm seeing more and more tools pop up to help VC source deals. Do you think the future of VC will move towards this model, which is very, very data driven, very, very analytical?
Absolutely. That's a trend that has been kind of propagating over the last 5 or 6 years. So since we started, that has been definitely a trend that has been forming, and it's increasingly so. And we think that's going to only continue. Like, still, obviously, there is a big difference if you are a hedge fund or if you are a VC or a private equity firm, but everyone is pushing for the most amount of information before they make a decision, right? So that's definitely a trend that's going to continue. And we think that we are definitely at the forefront of it, especially with actionable insights.
Yeah, amazing. Look, we're out of time. But Dom, thank you so much for joining. It's been amazing to have you. Um, yeah, I'm going to stop recording now, if that's all right. And then if you could
Thanks so much.
if you could
Thanks so much.
stick around for just 30 seconds, just